Hi friends, in this class we shall be discussing chapter 14, statistical description of data for CA foundation examinations. Okay, so first we will be discussing introduction to statistics. Okay, so what is statistics? Statistics is a subject which has very much of importance in the present world. It is applied almost everywhere. It is applied almost everywhere in this world. Okay, so now we shall be discussing where are these applications, some of the positions where they are applied, and we shall move further. Okay, so that is what we are going to do today. So management is where it's helpful in managing things. So if we know how to means all those requirements and everything for a particular period, then we can manage things. Then commerce, sales and all items, we need statistics. Okay, if data is available, what things to sell, where, what will be the demand, what will be the supply, all these things can be prejudged and then presented and used. All analysis can be used for development of this business. Okay, so economics people use statistics. Social sciences also statistics are used. For example, to give some schemes, social schemes can be provided using this. Okay, then what is mathematics? In mathematics, okay, statistics was once a part of mathematics, but now it has been developed into a full-fledged subject. It is also useful in public services to find out what are the services required at a particular place, and then that can be provided by the government. Okay, same way it is useful in defense, it is useful in banking, it's useful in insurance sector to find out what kind of the mortality rate of people and so on. Then the tourism and hospitality. Okay, police and military people also use statistics for their purposes. Okay, so that is what we do here. And then now we shall move on to how these people use it. Okay, so the government people, the government uses it for economic planning. The government uses it for economic planning and implementation of various social plans. Okay, to implement a particular plan somewhere, they have to understand whether it is required and what is the viability of that particular plan. Okay, same way, or scheme. Business people, what they do, they can plan and expand the horizons of their business on the basis of analysis of feedback data. Okay, so depending upon the feedback they receive from their consumers or from their customers, they can improve or change their products. Okay, that is what they do in business. We can impress. What happens in politics? All of you know that see, the ruling party will try to present their positives, and the opposition party will try to present their negatives by using statistics. Okay, this much percentage, this has happened, nothing has happened, and something has happened. All these things will be explained to present that their theory is true. Okay, that happens in politics. And what do research people do? They try to present their research paper in an authoritative manner by presenting researched proofs or collected data, using data and the research it is provided. Okay, next we shall discuss something about short history of statistics. And it is assumed that the origin of the word statistics is from different languages as mentioned below. Okay, so one is Latin word status, some Italian word statista, which can be compared to a pasta, right? You can remember this spelling, you should remember the spellings because that's how questions are asked. So German word is statistic, can be compared with swastik of Germany. Germany is Hitler's symbol. Okay, so French word is statistic with a QUE. Okay, so it has been observed that Kautilya had kept some birth records and death records in his Arthashastra. Okay, same way Akbar in the 16th century AD had started keeping records on agriculture. Akbar in the 16th century AD started keeping records on agriculture. Referring to Egypt, we can say that the first census was conducted in Egypt during this period. It is 3300 BC to 2000 BC. Okay. Next, see, you need to be careful about the spellings of these words. Okay, that's it. Now we shall be defining what statistics is. Okay, we shall try to define what statistics is. So statistics may be defined as either in a singular or plural sense. Okay, so it has two different senses. So that is, if it is taken as a singular and as a plural sense, singular sense and plural sense. So this is statistics. Okay, statistics has two different senses. First one is singular. The other one is plural. Okay, so in the singular part, in the singular sense, statistics means method or scientific methods used for analysis of data. Okay, and what do we mean by statistics in the plural sense? It actually means data, D-A-T-A, data or information. Okay, so we know that statistics in the singular sense means a scientific method, and in the plural sense it means data or information. Okay, now we shall discuss some limitations of statistics. Okay, so it is clear that before applying statistical methods, we must be aware of the following limitations. So the limitations are that statistics deals with aggregates only, that is, one particular value or an individual is of no importance. It is just a part of the whole group. So it is to be taken care of. So we should be taking good samples for giving a proper analysis. Statistics is concerned with quantitative data, and there are some factors which cannot be converted. Okay, future projections are likely to be inaccurate. Okay, because they depend upon random sampling. Because of random sampling, if the sample is not chosen correctly, the predictions can be inaccurate. Okay, the same way the statistical inferences are based on random sampling, and that's why the future projections may be inaccurate. Now we shall discuss how data is classified. Okay, data classification. The process of dividing ungrouped data into classes or groups and recording the number of observations belonging to a class or group is called classification. Means, first of all, collecting information and then grouping it into required classes, or we need to group it so that we can understand. Raw data is very much dangerous because people can get confused. One can get confused when seeing a large number of data. So it has to be organized and arranged. Okay, so it can be arranged basically based on many factors. One of them is their characteristics. Okay, one of the factors is their characteristics. Based on characteristics, if we are trying to classify the data, so it can be classified as qualitative and quantitative data. Okay, types of data. It is qualitative and quantitative. Qualitative means it has some property which is not exact, or which is not measurable. Exactly. Okay, it cannot be measured exactly. Quantitative means can be exactly measured. Okay, so let us describe what qualitative and quantitative data mean. So a qualitative characteristic, or the qualitative characteristic is known as an attribute. Okay, like the gender of a baby, nationality of a person, color of a flower, etc. are attributes of an item, and that is how that information can be classified. Okay, so if we are grouping all male children together and baby boys together and baby girls together, so we can classify them like that, how many boys and how many girls and so on. Okay, things which cannot be measured numerically in the same character are called attributes. Okay, so those things which cannot be measured numerically are called attributes. Like gender cannot be measured numerically, it is either a male or a female, like that. Nationality of a person, color of a flower, etc. cannot be measured. Okay, so same way, quantitative characteristic is known as a variable. Quantitative characteristic of an item is known as a variable, and a variable is a measurable quantity. A variable is a measurable quantity, and which can change with respect to time. Okay, so it can be measured in some unit as weight, age, income, etc. The variables implies that the variable implies the quantitative characteristic of an item. The variable may either be discrete or continuous. There are two types of variables, either discrete or continuous. See, sometimes for statistical analysis, this qualitative data has to be converted to quantitative classification or quantitative data by providing appropriate numbers or some descriptions to it. Okay. Now let us discuss types of variables. So discrete variable. What is a discrete variable and what is a continuous variable? Types of variables: discrete variable and continuous variable. Okay, these are the two major distributions. One is discrete variable and the other one is continuous variable. See, a variable which assumes finite or countably infinite number of isolated values, it is known as a discrete variable. An integer value is exact. A discrete variable has an integer value or it is exact. Okay, examples are the number of petals in a flower, the misprints in a book, and road accidents of a particular locality, and so on. We can give many more examples. So here the price of a commodity can be taken as a continuous variable because it happens to be in an interval, say from 2 to 5, whatever it is, maybe in thousands or lakhs or hundreds or something. Okay, a variable is known to be a continuous variable if it can assume any value from a given interval. Any value from a given interval, the price of a commodity, the height and weight of individuals, sale, profit, and so on. Okay, a variable can be expressed numerically when the attribute cannot be expressed numerically. Okay, we know that a variable can be, we have discussed that a variable can be expressed numerically while an attribute cannot be expressed numerically. Okay, so that's it. Now we shall move different ways of collection of data. Okay, so now we are classifying data based on the collection methods. So if based on the source of collection of data, we can classify it as either primary data or secondary data. If you have collected it directly, we can say that it is primary data. Otherwise, we say that it is secondary data. Okay, if it is directly collected from the person, then it is called primary data. Okay, otherwise, if we are sourcing it out by using some other organization, then we can say that it is a secondary data. Now, next is we shall discuss the differences between primary and secondary data. See, that primary data is the collection of original data for the first time. Primary data is the collection of original data for the first time. Secondary data is basically compilation of existing data. Secondary data is basically the compilation of existing data. Here, the primary data is collected by the investigator or by his own agents. Investigator or by his own agents. Okay, if I want to get information and if I am personally collecting or my company itself collects, then it can be considered as primary data for my company. Now, collecting primary data is actually more costly than sourcing it out from somebody else. It is relatively more costly than secondary data. So if somebody has collected it and we can get it, then that would be better, but we have to rely on somebody, that's it. Okay, so it is compiled by a person other than who has collected the primary data. Okay, secondary data, see, if you are getting at some data from somewhere, it may not be directly applicable to us, so we need to rearrange or compile it in the manner we require the data to be. Okay, this collection is relatively less costly. This collection means it is the secondary data. Collecting secondary data is less costly. Collecting secondary data is less costly. It may not be suitable directly for the purpose of inquiry. We need to reanalyze. We may have to rearrange the data according to our need. Maybe we have to enter it somewhere and then classify according to our requirement. There is no possibility of personal prejudice in its compilation because such data are already collected. Because if in primary data we can either ask or not ask some questions, but in this case all the questions have been asked or the data has been collected without the motive in mind. Okay, so that is why the secondary data is not having any kind of prejudice. Now, which are the methods to collect primary data? Methods of primary data collection. Okay, which are the methods employed for collecting primary data for the first time? Okay, the first one is the interview method, which can further be divided as personal interview, indirect interview, telephonic interview method, and so on. Okay, so these are the three interview methods. Okay, this one is personal interview, second one is indirect interview method, and then the telephonic interview method. Then the second major method is the mailed questionnaire method, and the third one is the observation method, by observing. We shall discuss each of them in detail. Okay, the questionnaires filled and sent by the enumerators. Okay, these are the four major methods of collecting primary data: interview method, mailed questionnaire method, observation method, and questionnaires filled and sent by the enumerators. Okay, now what is a personal interview? How data is collected in a personal interview? We shall discuss. See that in this case, the investigator or the person who is the interviewer meets the respondent or the interviewee directly and collects the information by asking them questions. Okay, the investigator meets the respondents directly and collects required information then and there from them. Okay, so in this method is used in case of natural calamity like super cyclone or an earthquake, like an epidemic, like a plague. Okay, either in a plague, natural calamities, these things are used. Natural calamities, we use personal interview method. We may collect necessary data much more quickly and accurately by applying this method. Next is personal interview method, and in personal interview method, what he does is that the investigator meets the respondents directly. He meets the person directly and collects the required information directly from the persons, from the people. Okay, so that is what is done. In this method, what is done is, say for example, this is the interviewer. Okay, this is the interviewer. He will be directly meeting. This is interviewer. And this is the person from whom the information has to be collected. Okay, then the information can be collected. The information is collected directly. Okay, the information is collected directly, or this is data directly by asking questions. By asking relevant questions. Okay, so that is how the interviewer gets information from the interviewee or the person from whom information has to be collected. You know that in a job interview also, what they need to do is try to gather information from the candidates, and from the candidates they need to find out, analyze all the information collected from all the other participants, all the candidates, and then they process the data, means, or they analyze the data. and find out which person is suitable for their particular job or company. Okay, who could be more beneficial to the company, and that is scrutinized by people inside the company who can manage. Okay, this kind of method is generally employed in case of a natural calamity. It is done in case of a natural calamity. See, this is the textbook line. Okay, so in the examination, options can be like this. Where is personal interview method, or in case of a natural calamity, which interview method could be more suitable? So like that, questions may be there. So in that case, it is a natural calamity, and like say for example a cyclone, an earthquake, or a plague, or now presently it is corona or COVID-19. Okay, so we may collect the necessary data much more quickly and accurately by applying this method. For example, if people are coming from outside, okay, they are quarantined and kept for testing, and their route map is collected. That in case if they are going outside or meeting other people, then their route map is collected, and we try to find out the possibility of spread of the disease. Okay, that is what is done. That is how it is done. Personal interview. They inquire the people about the people whom they have met in the last few days. Okay, that is how it is done. Now we shall move on to the next type of interview. Okay, next is indirect interview method. In indirect interview method, what happens is that in case if there are some practical problems in reaching the respondents directly, then the investigator shall collect the information, the necessary information, using some external reviewers who are related to the company or related to the organization. Okay, they must have close tie-ups with them. For example, in case of a rail accident, an indirect interview method is done. An indirect interview method is done. Okay, the person who or the organization which is inquiring or trying to collect information about the incident may not directly come, but they will try to find out the number of people affected in the rail accident through other sources. Okay, that is again indirect interview method, by asking other people about the situation, those who are directly involved or related to the incident. The first two methods, that is the direct method, direct interview method, and the indirect interview method. Okay, these two methods are more accurate. They are more accurate. Okay, because it is something direct and directly related to the people involved with the situation. But what happens is, since the spread may be large, the area covering the situation may be large, and it may not be possible to collect information in a small span of time. Okay, so it will take lot of time, and it may be inappropriate or it may be inapplicable for covering a large area, because it is not possible for a person to go to different places and collect information at the same time. So the time and distance, this will definitely create issues in collecting this kind of information. Okay, now we shall move on to the next one, which is the telephonic interview method. This will give a solution to both the situations provided above, both the problems which come in with the previous two interview methods. That is the distance problem is solved by telephonic interview method, as well as it is non-expensive, because the person doesn't have to spend his own time, as well as some money which is spent in traveling can also be avoided or saved. Okay, so in telephonic interview method, what happens is, it is clearly quick way of collecting information. You just have to call the related people and ask about or do your inquiry. Okay, so and also it is a non-expensive way, because we know that we can save our time as well as the other expenses involved in traveling. Okay, so it is a quick and a non-expensive way to collect primary data, where relevant information can be gathered by the researcher himself. Okay, and this data can be collected by talking to the people on the phone or affected people over the phone. Okay. The amount of non-responses for this situation may be maximum. Okay, because sometimes the phone may not be connected, or the telephone number is inaccurate, or the person is not willing to respond properly. So these are situations which face or pose problems for this kind of interview method. So that is why we consider that this is a less consistent method, but it has wide coverage. So there are situations and problems with almost all kind of methods which we have to deal with in a proper manner. Okay, we shall move on to the next main part, or we discussed three different types of interview. Which are the different types of interviews? First one, direct interviews. Which were the different direct interview methods? First one was direct interview. Direct interview. Second one was indirect interview. And the third one is telephonic interview. Okay, in all these three cases, it is considered as a part of interview method. Where questions are asked and information is collected directly. Okay. Next, mailed questionnaire method. The next major area is mailed questionnaire method. In mailed questionnaire method, the situation involves, or the process involves, framing well drafted and soundly sequenced questionnaires, where the questions are properly arranged and properly drafted, so that the person who is responding to the questions will be able to properly understand and answer the questions. Okay, so it shall cover all the important aspects of the problem under consideration. So generally there will be some problem, and that problem or situation, and that situation, to solve that situation we need to get information. So therefore any kind of questions that can be related to this thing can be asked, but it should be well drafted and ordered. Okay. And then what happens is, once the questionnaire is prepared, it is sent to the respondents with a prepaid stamp, so that the respondents don't have to spend their money. They just have to fill it and then they can post it back. Okay. It is also equipped with a prepaid stamp. So they don't even have to spend a rupee for posting it. Okay. So it is sent to them. So then providing all the necessary guidelines for filling up the questionnaire. Okay, how to fill the questionnaire, all this information is also provided along with the questionnaire, and it is mailed to the people, and it is obtained back using a prepaid stamp fixed envelope, which they can receive back. Pros and cons of this kind of method is that it can cover a large area, very large area, because the questions can be sent by post, it can be mailed. Okay, so it is called a mailed questionnaire method. And the problem is that in this kind of questionnaire, the amount of non-responses will be maximum, because you may receive a package, but you may choose to not answer or send the mail back. Okay, so that may happen. So no amount of non-responses will be maximum, and it is likely to be maximum. It will be maximum. Next is observation method. In observation method, what happens is that it is what is the situation? We observe and we take decisions personally. Okay, it is done by direct observation. The data is collected by direct observation or by using instrument. See, very nice example is provided, that the data on height and weight of group of students. So So for example, a physical education teacher will be collecting the height and weight of students in a particular class or of a particular school. Okay, so for this purpose, he will have to spend his time, sit on a table, and he may be having an assistant who will be measuring the heights and weights of a child, and he will be noting them down. Okay, so this takes a long amount of time. Okay, so it is time consuming. It is time consuming, and you have to put in your own time as well as energy in measuring and putting it down. So you have to be present there. So that is the situation, and it can cover only a small area. Like for example, if that one person can collect information from only a small region in limited time. Okay, so although this is likely to be the best method of data collection, yes, the data that you collect will be accurate. You will not have any kind of doubt about the quality of the data. It will be exact and perfect for whatever purpose it is collected. Okay, it is the best method for data collection. Which is the best method for data collection? Observation method is the best method for data collection. This is the best method for data collection. Okay, observation method is considered as the best method for data collection. Next is questionnaire form of data collection. You must have encountered a situation like people are coming to your home with a large amount of documents. Okay, questionnaire form of data collection. Or in this kind of data collection, what happens is one person will come to your house and they will ask or inquire about details. Okay, there will be they will be having a large sheet where many questions are present. For example, you know that what happens in a census. What happens in a census? People will come. Related school teachers may be allotted this job, and they may come to your home. They will inquire about everything. What is your education? What are your family members? What are their qualifications? What will they do? Means what are they doing? And what is the age of the child? Are they vaccinated? Are they not vaccinated? Almost all kind of questions which can be asked. What is your age? Everything will be asked. Okay, do you have a gas cylinder? Do you have a vehicle? Do you have a car? Do you have a bike? Everything. Do you use a mobile connection? All questions are asked and noted down. Okay, so it is used for larger inquiries from people who are surveyed. So in this case, the person has to be present. The person who is inquiring is called an enumerator. He is called an enumerator and will collect information directly by talking to the person or interviewing the people having information. Okay, what is done? This is used for larger inquiries from people who are surveyed. Means from a particular person, large number of questions have to be answered. A large number of large inquiries have to be collected. Lot of inquiries have to be collected. Okay, the questions are explained and hence data is collected. For example, in the question, if he asks you some question and you are not able to answer, then he can use his intelligence and he may be able to explain you the question and use his own idea to fill the answer. So in no case the question will be unanswered. Okay, so if you choose to not respond, then also he can fill it in some manner. Okay, because it is him who is filling. The enumerator fills the data. What happens is, okay, the enumerator will not give the form, but he will fill it himself. The enumerator will fill the data himself in the sheet. Okay, it is not given. He will be asking questions, getting information, and it is him who is filling. Okay, so that is what is done in questionnaire form of data collection. This is done for larger inquiries. Okay, next we shall move on to objectives of classification of data. Why do we classify data? Why do we classify data? What are the objectives of classification and what is the need to classify? First thing is that large amount of data when collected, it remains or it produces confusion. Okay, we may not be able to judge what to do with this kind of information. So classification will put the data in a neat and precise form, and it will also condense it or compress it so that it can be easily understood and interpreted. Okay, so first thing is that data can be put in a neat and precise as well as condensed form so that it can be easily understood and interpreted. First thing is collected data should be interpreted properly. So it is organized. Second is that the classification will provide or facilitate easy comparison and contrast between various characteristics. Okay, we can compare whether it is how much similarities and differences. Comparison means we will find out similarities, and contrast means we shall find out differences between various characteristics in the situation or case. Okay, statistical analysis is possible only for classified data. Statistics has provided tools for classified data, so it will help in finding out and studying. It will help in studying and finding out the relationship between various characteristics. Okay, statistics will be possible only for classified data. Once classified, we will be able to find out the different characteristics between the similar kind of data. Okay, it will eliminate the classification. By classifying, we can eliminate unnecessary details which are present in the data, and we can make the data more readily understandable. Okay, these are the observations. First thing, it puts it in a neat and precise form. Second one is that it makes it possible for us to compare similarities or find out similarities and differences between various characteristics. Also, it will help us find out the relationship between the various characteristics. Fourth and the last point is that it can eliminate unnecessary details and make it understand. We shall move on to the next topic, that is classification of data based on objective. We have described two ways of classification previously, right? First one based on the source, second one based on the characteristics, and the third one is based on objective. Why is the data collected? So it will be organized. Okay, it will be organized based on the objective of collection, and the objective of collection could be time or place, or it could be some kind of measure, like we may say that it is quantitative measurement, or it may be qualitative measurement, some quality. Okay, whether it is certain habits or color, that is quality. Say if we are talking about heights, weights and marks, then we can say that it is quantity, something like that. Okay, so we shall discuss this topic first. So we shall first understand what is classification of data based on objective. Okay, in this there are 4 different types of classification. If it is based on time, we say it is chronological classification. You must have heard about Facebook timeline. So it gives data, means all the data that you have posted, all the photos that you have posted will be provided or will be arranged according to a time, or whatever activity that you have conducted on Facebook will be provided in the Facebook timeline. Okay, in that order. Okay, so the data arranged by date and time is called the chronological classification of data. Same way, the examples are like index number, which are arranged for a period of years. Index number, the example is an index numbers which are arranged for a period of years. Okay. Now, the second way of classification based on objective is geographical or spatial series data classification. Spatial series data classification. That is geographical classification, like people are arranged according to their place. Okay, like North Indians, South Indians, like that, or people belonging to a particular country. We can say that we are Indians. It is based on geographical classification. So we are arranging the data according to the place or geography. Okay. So same way, the next topic is, or the next section is qualitative or ordinal data. Qualitative or ordinal data. Ordinal means it is something based on ranks. Okay, we can get ordinal means it is ranked data, ordered. Qualitative or ordinal data. Data which is classified based on attributes. Attributes like say being married or unmarried, widowed. Okay, this is what we can say about a person, whether he or she is married, unmarried, or widowed. Okay, nationality of a person can be considered as a qualitative characteristic. So, if our objective of collection of data is to find out the nationality of people, then we will arrange according to their nations. The smoking habit of a person is also qualitative classification. If the data is classified based on color, if there are many flowers and you are arranging them on the basis of colors, or if people are arranged based on their skin color, then we say that it is a qualitative classification. Okay, same way now we will move on to quantitative or cardinal data. If the data is based, if the data collected is based on a variable like heights, weights, marks, say lap time of an athlete, etc., we can say that it is quantitative or cardinal data. Okay, so here data is classified with respect to a variable. Variable means we know what is a variable. It can achieve value between a range. Okay, or between an interval, anywhere between an interval. It is not discrete. It is, there can be two different types of variables, which is discrete and continuous. So in this case we are talking about a general variable. It can be either discrete or continuous. Okay, now we shall discuss each one of them in detail later on. And one more way, the data may be classified as frequency data or non-frequency data. These two, like say qualitative and quantitative data, these two are can be considered as these two can be considered as frequency data. These two can be considered as frequency data, and these two can be considered as non-frequency data. Okay, so this is what we mean by classification of data based on objective, and also we can rearrange them on the basis of frequency, means having frequency or non-frequency data. Okay, that is what we have mentioned here, and that is frequency data or non-frequency data. So qualitative as well as quantitative data belong to the frequency group, and the time series data or chronological classification and spatial classification or geographical classification belong to the non-frequency group. Okay, now further we shall discuss about how to present data, which are the different methods of presenting data. So data can be presented in three basic ways. Okay, three ways it is normally presented. First way is a textual presentation, where a large description is given as text. We need to read all of them and then understand something. It is something like a mathematics word problem, which is given as in textual form. Okay, we need to convert them into equations and then we need to find out the solution. Okay, so the second one is tabular presentation of data, means the data will be arranged in rows and columns. Okay, the data will be presented in rows and columns. We will be preparing a table, and we know what here headings will be there, here also headings will be there, and then here we will have to have the data entered. Okay, so which will give an idea of the classification. So that is here, and then finally we will be discussing what a diagrammatic representation means. It is just presented in a visual form so that any layman can understand. This is a visual form of presentation. Okay, it is a visual form of presentation. Now we shall discuss that. What is textual form of data or textual presentation of data? In this, what we do, we present the data in a comprehensive format. Okay, the data for comprehension will be presented as text. Okay, the text is presented along with the data for comprehension, so that we need to read or go through the whole text. We need to go through the whole text, and this is the serious drawback of this method. Okay, so if a large amount of text is given, people may feel bored to read the complete information. So therefore, we may not be able to get the exact detail sometimes if we are not serious. Otherwise, it can be the most elaborate way of expressing something. Means it enables us to emphasize certain points. It enables us to emphasize certain points with great detail. We can write things in great detail so that we can understand. For example, the official report of an inquiry commission, which is made in textual presentation. We know that. Okay, official report of an inquiry commission will be made usually in textual presentation. So every event will be written in detail. For example, if you go for some police case, then every detail, every account, whatever is happening and all these things will be written in textual form, in whatever language it is. Okay, next, what is tabular presentation of data? Tabular presentation is nothing else but a systematic arrangement of data in rows and columns. You know what is row and what is column. Okay, so we have, say, maybe this is a table. Okay, this is a table. It will have rows and columns in it. It will have rows and columns in it. Okay, we may write like this: rows and columns. There may be some titles here, say like A, B, C, D and E. Here we may have, say, 1, 2 and 3, and here information will be filled. Okay, like say 10, 11, 12, 14, 16, 5, 8, 4, 3, 2, 1, 8, 0, 1, 7, like this. So what we say is that this region, this is the information. Okay, this is the information part. This is the column heading and this is the row heading part. Okay, so this is called a tabular presentation in short. Okay, actually the statistical table will have many more parts which we will be describing further. Okay, so in this case, the tabulation, what we mean by tabulation, it is a systematic arrangement of data in rows and columns. It is a systematic arrangement of data in rows and columns. Okay, it is designed to simply present data for the purpose of analysis and statistical inferences. Okay, we present it for the purpose of analysis and statistical inferences. Okay, next is different parts of statistical table. We have discussed about the statistical table just above, and there we mentioned that we have many more parts in a statistical table. So we shall go into it further. Okay, so the statistical table will have four major parts. We'll have four major parts and some other minor parts. So the major parts are the title or box head. Okay, then the next major part is called the captions, and the third major part is the stubs, and fourth major part is called the body. Okay, so as we discussed earlier, so in this tabular presentation, we know that this is the column heading, right? Column headings. And these are called row headings. Okay, so this is first row, this is the second row, this is the third row, R1, R2 and R3. Same way, this one is called the first column, this is the second column, this is the third column, and this is the fourth column. Okay, same way, this is the fifth column, like that. Okay, so here what we say is that a title or box head title, we need a title for the table. We need to mention what this table is for. It should be given a proper title which emphasizes on what the table contents are. Okay, that is, the title should be clear and brief. How we should present a statistical table, that is what we are discussing here. Okay, so the title should be clear and brief. A very short title should be provided, which gives us a very good idea of what is there in the table. Okay, so that is, it should be carefully worded so that one is capable of only one interpretation. It should not give many different interpretations. It should give exactly one interpretation. That is how the title should be written or framed. Okay, next is the captions. Captions are nothing else but what we call the column headings. Okay, captions are nothing else but column headings. Captions are column headings. COLUMN, column headings. Okay, same way, stubs. What are stubs? Stubs are heading for the horizontal row or row headings. We can call them row headings. Okay, stubs are nothing else but row headings. And the body is what is lying in the middle, which comprises of both the rows and columns. Their intersection part is called the body. It will contain the actual figures which is present to the reader. Okay, of the data. The data in the body corresponds to the classification of. So the body of the table contains figures to be presented to the reader, and the data in the body corresponds to the classification under captions and stubs. Okay. The next some items are, these things are some minor parts. These are the minor parts. Okay, these are the minor parts of the table. Okay, head note. We should provide a head note if possible. It is a supplement to the title, and it is given below the title if the need is felt. Okay, that is, if the title may not be completely emphasizing something, then it can be added as a note in the heading. Okay, it explains the entire table or its major parts. It may emphasize or it may explain the entire table or its major parts, or what the table is for. Okay, it is a supplement to the header or the title of the table. Supplement to the title of the table. Okay. Next is unit of measurement. What is unit of measurement? All the units of measurement which are used in the table will be mentioned along with the title. Units of measurement will be put on the title. Okay, units of measurement should always be stated along with the title, whether the numbers are in crores or thousands or hundreds, whatever will be mentioned in the title very clearly. Same way, footnote should be provided wherever possible or wherever necessary, that when any item needs some more description, so for example, put a star somewhere and then give some description. Okay, if some item requires more description, then it is given through a footnote which is directly given after the table or below the table. A footnote is provided below the table. The name itself suggests somewhere down. Okay, foot means down. So below the body of the table, it is provided as a footnote. Okay. So now what is source note? Okay, if we are taking the information from some particular source, then we should quote that source as a reference. Okay, so that we can verify the source of the data or the accuracy of data if needed by going to the source. Okay, the source note should be provided. Source notes give us information about the source from where the data has been taken. Whichever place you are taking the data and doing your research, you need to provide the source note for that purpose, for further reference. Whenever, in case if there is some error in the data, the source can be referred to correct the values. Okay. Same way, if a particular text may contain, or if a particular document may contain more than one table, then to refer to a particular table, we may need a table number. Okay, that is how the tables are classified among each other, like the table number 4.1, table number 4.2, table number 4.3, and so on. Here 4 may refer to a chapter of that text. And 1 means it is a first table. 4.1 means 1 is the first table of that 4th chapter. Okay, like that we may give an appropriate table numbers for each table. Okay, each and every table should be serially numbered so that it becomes easier for reference purpose in the future. It should be either in the center or at the top of the title or in the bottom of the table. Somewhere it should be mentioned properly. Usually it is done along with the title of the table. Okay, it is a part of the title. Now we shall look at it as a diagram. Okay, this is the diagram of a table. We can clearly see that there is a table number provided as 4.5 is the table number. This is the table number. Okay, then we have the title, population of India according to workers and non-workers by gender and location. Okay, population of India according to workers and non-workers by genders and location. So these are the two row headings. These are the row headings. These are the row headings. So we have the column headings here. These are the column headings. Okay, this is the column heading. You can take it in red color if you want, or say blue color. These are the column headings. Okay, first column, second column, third column, fourth column, and so on. Okay, column headings are given here. And then this part is the body part. This part is the body part. The body. Okay, so here we can see that the source is given, that the details have been taken from the Census of India 2001, and that is a source note from where the data has been taken, and there is a footnote is given. That information says that the numbers are rounded somewhere nearest to crores. Okay, unit also is mentioned somewhere here and here also. Okay, this is where the units are given. And here we have mentioned in the footnote that the figures are rounded to the nearest crore. Okay, that's it. So this is 3 crore. This will be 9 crores. This is 40 crores. That is how we need to read. So total 40 crore people are there as workers in both urban and rural areas. Okay. Next, we shall discuss some properties or notes while preparing a statistical table. Okay, so now while preparing the table, we need to be careful that the table length should be well balanced. It should not be very long or very broad, so that the data interpretation may become difficult. It should be well balanced in length and breadth. Okay, the data arranged in the table must be in such a way that comparison between different figures is possible without much labor and time. See, the purpose of classification itself is to decode data easily or to make observations. Okay, so that is what we mean, and that is why we need to arrange the table in such a way that comparison of different figures should be easily possible. So the total rows, columns, the total of the rows and column totals should be mentioned, and the unit of measurement should also be written somewhere, as we have discussed earlier along with the figure. Okay, the data should be arranged intelligently and in a well balanced sequence, and the presentation of data should be appealing to the eyes as far as it is practical. So it should be presented in a beautiful way. Next, notes describing the source of the data should be presented in the footnotes. Okay, which may describe either rows or columns or something, which should be provided at the bottom of the table. Here we provide footnotes, notes describing the source of data, and which bring clarity to the table. If necessary, about any rows or columns are known as footnotes, and they should be presented at the bottom of the table that we have described earlier. And we have already said that the statistical table has 4 major parts and some other minor parts. These 4 major parts should be clearly mentioned. Other things are optional, but these 4 items are to be mentioned clearly. Which are the 4 major parts? First thing is the box head or the title. Title should be clearly mentioned. Then we should mention the captions clearly. Then it is the stubs and the body. Okay, this contains the actual table. actual information. These are reference purpose. Okay. Next, we shall move on to diagrammatic presentation of data. What is diagrammatic presentation of data? We know that it is presentation of data in a visual form. Okay. So if we present data, or the diagrammatic presentation of data is a technique of presenting data visually in the form of diagrams. We know that we have many different diagrams, as we can see that this is a pie diagram. This is somewhat like a bar graph. Okay, rectangle graph. This is somewhat like a line graph, and this is arranged as a pictograph. Okay. So the diagrams and graphs give us a bird's view, an overview of the given set of numerical information or data. Okay. So they can present data which is simple and readily comprehensible. Okay. So there are many types of diagrams. There are many types of diagrams, and the types are, say, maybe one-dimensional, two-dimensional diagrams, and we have three-dimensional diagrams also. Okay, one-dimensional diagrams are something like this. So this is one-dimensional diagram. It is a line diagram, or a bar diagram is considered as a one-dimensional diagram. It is considered as a one-dimensional diagram, which has only frequency or height corresponding to an item. Okay. Same way, two-dimensional diagrams examples include rectangular diagrams, square diagrams, and pie diagrams. Rectangle diagrams, square diagrams, and pie diagram. They are two-dimensional diagrams. Okay. The angle and area refer to two different items in a pie diagram. So the three-dimensional diagrams will be, what is three-dimensional diagram? Three-dimensional diagram include cubes and blocks, which are used to present data in a three-dimensional form. Okay, shall move on to further details. Let us discuss some of the important diagrams. This is just an image shown where we have different types of statistical information which is provided in terms of graphs. Okay, now what is a line diagram? Line diagram is used to represent data over a period of time. Line diagram is used to represent what is the purpose of each of the diagrams? A particular diagram is used for a particular purpose. Okay, every diagram has a particular purpose. So what are the different types of diagrams and what are their purposes? This is what we are going to discuss. So a line diagram, okay, is used to represent data which is collected over a period of time. For example, in a cricket match, we may try to understand, okay, this is the first over, second over, third over, fourth over, fifth over, sixth over, seventh over. First over, what are the amount of scores? In first over, what was the score? In the second over, what was the score? In the third over, what was the score of the batsman? How many runs were obtained? In the fourth, how many runs were obtained? In the fifth over, how many runs were obtained? And they are connected using lines. Okay, that is how data is interpreted. This is called a line diagram, or it is also known as historiogram, not histogram, it is historiogram. Okay, let us discuss different forms of line diagrams. We have simple line diagram. Okay, the time variable is taken on the x-axis. Okay, simple line diagram. Simple line diagram. In simple line diagram, the time variable is taken here. This is time. Okay, or we say the number of overs, first over, second over, third over. It is actually nothing else but time, which increases with respect to time. Okay, the time variable is taken on the x-axis, and the other variable, in this case we were talking about the runs in a particular over, not cumulative, but in this case runs in a particular over were mentioned as here. So this is the second variable will be written here. Okay, and the points whatever obtained are connected using straight lines or line segments. So what we get is a simple line diagram. Okay, we may use multiple line diagrams together to compare the performance of two batsmen. Now moving further, what is a logarithmic chart? So this appears to be a logarithmic scale chart where because if there are large amount of fluctuations, so the line graph may appear to be very fluctuating. So to avoid that, we may use, when time series data displays large amount of fluctuations or wide range of fluctuations, then on the y-axis, the logarithmic values of the other variable is taken. Okay, we will take the logarithmic values, and the points are joined by line segments. These points are joined by line segments. It is also known as ratio graph or ratio chart. A logarithmic chart is known as a ratio graph or ratio chart. Ratio chart. Ratio chart. This is nothing else but logarithmic chart. Okay, that's it. Next, we'll discuss about multiple line chart. Okay, this is nothing else, just for comparison. It's just a line chart, but two line charts are plotted together on the same type of graph, on the same axis. Okay, so for example, in the first over, the first batsman got this much, and in the second innings, the other batsman got this much. So that is what we do. So when two or more time series data are expressed in the same unit, then the presentation of time dependent variable against the time period is known as multiple charts. Okay, is done using multiple charts. Comparison. So it is used for comparison of more than one information. Okay, next we have multiple axis chart. You can see that here multiple variables are included together. Okay, there are multiple variables together and the graph is presented. It is a very complex form of a chart. So where we have temperature, we have power, we have the load, and also while having the load, there may be some kind of errors also in the calculation of the measures. Okay, so all these things are together taken, and this is something ours. Okay. Now we will discuss what is a bar diagram. Bar diagram, there are two types of bar diagrams. One is a horizontal bar diagram and then one is vertical bar diagram. This one is a vertical bar diagram where the bars are vertical. Otherwise, we will be having something like this. So this is x-axis and y-axis. We will have bars like this. Okay, this is how information will be provided. Okay. So these are the two different types of bar diagrams. They are for different purposes. Horizontal bar diagram is used for the presentation of qualitative data. Okay, you know that what is qualitative data. So which are not measurable exactly using a number. Okay, using numbers. So horizontal bar diagram is used for qualitative data or data varying over the space. Okay, vertical bar diagrams are used for quantitative data. Vertical bar diagrams are used for time series data or quantitative data. Hope you are clear with the bar diagram parts. Next, there are different types of bar diagram. One is a simple bar diagram. We will be presenting horizontal charts for simplicity. So simple bar diagram, it is set to represent only one characteristic or a variable. There is no comparison between two different aspects, but yes, of the same thing. But say for example, marks of some students, say in mathematics or statistics. Okay, marks of student A is this much, marks of student B is this much, marks of student C is this much. These are marks. This can be done by using a simple bar diagram. Okay. So in this case, the data is presented using vertical bars with its heights proportional to the arranged frequency of the variable. Okay, time series data is not arranged. If the time series data is not to be arranged, but the rectangles are drawn directly according to the frequencies. The time series data is not to be arranged, but the rectangles are drawn according to the frequencies. Okay, this is what we mean by time series data. Usually time is taken as the variable here, or in this case they are the different students or subjects. Now multiple bar diagram. See, here we have the time, different types of different years are provided, and then comparison of two different quantities, two different items are given. Say for example, this is the production of rice and this is the production of wheat in this year. What is how much and how much, like that we can compare. So when the bar diagram for two or more sets of
related data is provided, then we call that diagram as a multiple bar diagram. We call it multiple bar diagram. It is used for comparison of related series. Okay. Now, what is subdivided bar diagram? This is also a category. You should just know what is subdivided bar diagram. And see, here we can see different colors. Okay, they are different characteristics of the same variable. Okay, where one bar represents one character, the second one represents the other character, and the third one represents the third character of this particular item. Okay, so when a bar diagram represents more than one character of a single variable, then it is called the subdivided or component bar graph. Okay, you need to know this. What is component bar graph? It is nothing else but a subdivided bar graph. It is used to represent various components of the data of a single variable or variate. Now, the most common and attractive one is the pie diagram. You all know, we are studying it from say 8th standard or 7th standard or even lower. Okay, so let us see what a pie diagram means, discuss the parts of it. Okay, so a pie diagram is a circular graph. We can see that it is a circular graph which represents the total value, with its components. It compares every part with its total value. Okay, the area of the circle represents the total value and different sectors. See, this is a red sector, this is a blue sector, this is a purple sector, then we have the green sector, then we have the orange sector. There is a very minor line called the say pink sector, and then we have blue sector, and then green sector again, another green. So here what happens is that the circle is divided into sectors by radius, and the area of, see, these are radii, these are the radii which divides the circle into many different parts. Okay, and the sectors are proportional to the angles at the center. The sectors are proportional to the angles at the center. This is an angle at the center. Okay, it is generally used for comparing the relation between various components of a value between components of the total value. Okay, that is, it is generally used for comparing the relationship between the various components of the value and between components. Okay, which one is more, how much of the whole is one part. That is how we compare the data. So this kind of graph is used for internal comparison or comparison with the whole. Okay, so in pie diagram the data are expressed in percentages. The whole data is considered as 100. So therefore, every other value will be less than 100. Okay, each component is expressed as a percentage of the total value. Okay, each component is expressed as a percentage of the total value. A pie diagram is also known as an angular diagram. A pie diagram is also known as an angular diagram. Pie diagram is also known as an angular diagram. Okay, now what is frequency distribution? We all know that we used to find mean, median and mode in 10th standard. Okay, so there we used to prepare a table using tally marks and so on. So that is how we classify data, means tabulate data using frequencies. Okay, how many times a particular value is repeating will be called the frequency of that particular value. Okay, so we shall be taking that frequency distribution. It is a tabular representation of statistical data. Frequency distribution is nothing else but a tabular representation of statistical data. And when the variable assumes only finite values and its range is small, a discrete frequency distribution is prepared. If the values are very less, say 5, 10, 15 or maybe 20 or something, then they will be put separately so that they can be individually studied. Okay, but when the variable is assuming large range, okay, large range, then what happens, or it is spanning over a large area, then what happens, we will distribute it into classes and we will study it individual classes. Okay, that is what is done. So a variable is, if a variable is capable of assuming any values or large range of values are assumed by a variable, then we can have a continuous frequency distribution which is prepared. Okay, these things, how to prepare a frequency distribution and all, we will be discussing in the next chapter. Presently we are just giving an overview of the basics, okay, in this chapter, and that is why we call the chapter as a introduction to statistics or statistical description of data. What are the vocabulary, what are the terms used in this chapter and in this class, and so on. What are the terms used in our text will be familiarized to you. Next, how to prepare a continuous frequency distribution. Again, this will be done in the later class. Okay, we shall discuss everything. This is an algorithm which is mentioned. So first, to find the smallest and the largest observation, find the number of class intervals. Okay, you note down this, how to find. This is number of class intervals. If the data has to be divided into many different classes, so how many class intervals are there? That can be found out using this formula. Okay, so number of class interval into class length. What is the class length? That can be fixed. Say for example 10 or 20 or 100, we can fix the class length. And we know the range. Range is nothing else but the highest observation minus the smallest observation of the data. Okay, so before classifying, we usually use this formula or this relationship to distribute it into classes. And we already know how to prepare a frequency distribution using tally marks by putting strokes against the numbers, and how many times a particular number is repeated. We will use the stroke 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 is done like this. We know that what is tally marks. Okay, and then we count the tally, and whatever, here it is 5, so 5 will be the frequency of that particular variable. So that is how we do it. So we shall describe this thing when we prepare the tables in the next chapter. Okay, now what is a cumulative frequency distribution? What is a cumulative frequency distribution? There are two types of cumulative frequency distribution. First one is the less than type cumulative frequency distribution, and the other one is the more than type cumulative frequency distribution. Less than type will be based on the upper boundary point. Okay, upper boundary limits of the upper class limits of a particular class. So these are based on, these are for continuous class intervals only. Continuous class intervals. Okay, if the data is a continuous distribution, then only we will be using cumulative frequency distribution, whether less than or more than. Okay, when we say cumulative frequency distribution, by default it is to be understood as less than type cumulative frequency distribution. This one will be mentioned in case wherever required. Okay, so this is an example of a less than type cumulative frequency, and this table contains almost everything. See, we have say 6, say some marks of certain 70 students were taken, or say 30 students were taken. Marks of 30 students were taken together, and they were classified. Okay, how many students got 6 marks out of 20? So there was only one tally, so it will give you here frequency is 1, and that, like that. So 7, how many tallies? So we will count the number of 7s in the whole data. So out of 30, we got 7 students who got, we have only one student who got 7 marks, and there were no students who got 8 marks. So this is discrete arrangement of data, and these are the tally marks, and this is the frequency. Frequency is nothing else but the count of 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, and then 1 is 6. So 6 will be the count of the tallies, how many times a particular number is repeating. Okay, there are 6 students who got 11 marks. There are 6 students who got 11 marks, and like that. So now what is a cumulative frequency? Cumulative frequency means how many students got more than 6 marks, 6 or more than 6 marks? 1 student. How many students got 7 or less than type cumulative? How many students got less than 6 marks? 6 or less than 6 marks? There is 1 student. How many students got less than 7 marks? So in this also and this also. So we have 1 plus 1 is 2. How many students got less than 8 marks? It will be nobody plus this plus this. So it is 2. So how many students got less than 9 marks? All these students. Okay, 3 plus 1 plus 1. That is 5. And so on. That is how we do this calculation. And final total here in this case, this will be nothing else but the total of the frequencies. Okay. Total number of students or learners. One was the less than type and the other one was the more than type. Okay. So more than type cumulative frequency can be calculated in the same way. We will discuss that also in detail in the next chapter. Okay. More than type means more than what? It is a lower boundary point. Okay. Now we will discuss what is frequency density. Frequency density is defined as, what is frequency density? Frequency density is defined as the ratio of class frequency to that of the corresponding class size. So class frequency by class frequency by class frequency by class size will be called the frequency density. Class frequency divided by class size will be called the frequency density. Frequency density will be equal to class frequency divided by class size. This is the formula. Okay. Same way, relative frequency. What is relative frequency? See, relative frequency. What is relative frequency? Relative frequency is the class frequency expressed as the ratio of the total frequency. It is class frequency expressed as a ratio of the total frequency. Okay. So that is class frequency by total frequency. Class frequency divided by total frequency will be called relative frequency. Here it was class frequency divided by class size. Okay. So class frequency divided by total frequency will give you relative frequency. Here the value of the relative frequency will lie between 0 and 1. Because they are expressed in percentages, it will be 0 and 1. Okay. It will be below 0 and 1. The class frequency will always be less than the total frequency. So it will always be a proper fraction. So proper fractions always lie between 0 to 1. Okay. The sum of relative frequencies will be equal to 1. Or that is unity. The sum of relative frequencies will be equal to 1. A very important part. The sum of relative frequencies will be equal to 1. The sum of relative frequencies is equal to 1 or unity. That is graphical representation of a frequency distribution. Okay. The frequency distribution data can also be represented graphically in the following ways. One is a histogram, or it is also called as area diagram. Now we have the frequency polygon, what is a frequency curve, and the fourth one is ogives or cumulative frequency curve, less than type cumulative frequency curve and more than type cumulative frequency curve. And what can we obtain from histogram, frequency polygon, frequency curve, ogives or cumulative frequency graph will be discussed in this portion. Okay, so let us move further. Histogram or area diagram. We know what is a histogram, right? Let us see this. This appears to be a histogram where classes are written on the x-axis. And here we have the frequency. Okay, that's it. So to draw the histogram, we prepare rectangles like this. We prepare the rectangles. Here one rectangle, then another rectangle. All rectangles are put adjoined to each other. It is of a continuous variable. That's why this is how the graph is prepared and the heights are arranged. Now the class boundary is taken to construct the graph, and the class length of each class interval must be the same. Okay, the class length, we try to make the class length same. But it is not mandatory. Again, let me say, the class length may not be given as equal, but we need to construct the graph. To construct the graph, we need to make the class lengths equal, okay, or proportional at least, so that the area may be proportional to the total area of the graph. Here we can use the histogram to find out the mode graphically. Okay, use the histogram to find the mode of the data. The mode of the data can be found graphically using histogram. Mode is obtained from histogram. Mode means it is the maximum occurring value. So in this case, we can see that the purple line, this line is the maximum region. So we can go for this to find out the mode. Okay. Now we again move further. Okay, if the classes were unequal, and the width of the intervals differed among the classes, then the height of the bar for each class would be proportional to the frequency density of that class. That is, we say that whenever we are making this, we try to make the classes equal. If they are not, we will make them proportional to the frequency density of the whole region. Okay. Now, what is a frequency polygon? Frequency polygon is nothing else but the same extension of a histogram. Suppose if we have, say, if we connect the centers of these points, if we connect the centers of these points, this is the center of the height of the histogram for each bar, and if we connect them using straight lines, okay, like this, and then we connect it to the previous class, imaginary class, and then the next class, what we get here is a closed figure formed of different line segments. So we call it a polygon, or it is called a frequency polygon. Now instead of straight lines, if we draw using a freehand curve, then we can call it a frequency curve. That's it. Okay. So this description is mentioned how to prepare a frequency curve and frequency polygon. So if the curve is taken, when we talk about the frequency curve as we described will be prepared as a smooth curve, and it is understood that the total area will be taken as unity, total area under the curve. For example, if this is there and we have a frequency curve like this, then the total area is considered to be 1 unit. Okay, 1 unit, and it is a limiting form of histogram. Okay, it is a limiting form of histogram. See, I am highlighting those points which will be exam oriented. Okay, so the limiting form of histogram or frequency polygon. A frequency polygon will be called the limiting form of a histogram. Okay, a frequency polygon will be called the limiting form of a histogram. This is very important part. This one, a limiting form of a histogram. Limiting form of a histogram. Area under the curve is taken as unity. That is generally everywhere. The whole area is always taken as unity, and every height will be considered as the part of the unity. Okay, these are the different types of curves that can occur or we can encounter. One is a bell-shaped curve, which is shown here. For a normal distribution, we have a bell-shaped curve. U-shaped curve will be somewhat like this. Okay, x-axis, y-axis, and then the shape may be like this. The J-shaped curve will be like this. Say it is decreasing fast, and then it is increasing. This is called a J-shaped curve, or it may be like this. It's called a J-shaped curve. Okay, and it may be this way also. This is also considered as the J-shaped curve. Okay, this is also J-shaped curve. That is, but yes, here they are opposite to each other. Mixed curve is something where the curves go like this, up and down, sometimes down, sometimes up. So it may be a combination of all these types of curves. Okay. Yeah. Now let us discuss what are the advantages of graphical presentation of data. So the graph presents the data in a fashion so that it is easier to understand. We know that it is very simple and easy to understand. Why is graphical presentation important? Because it is easy to understand. It is easy to understand. Then it gives an attractive presentation to the statistical data as compared to tables. Tables, you have to go into it and understand what it is. Okay, but in a graph we can generally find out some properties directly just by observing the graph, like what is more, what is less, like that. Comparison is easily possible when a graphical representation is made. So that is the comparison of data relating to two different periods of time or two different regions can be easily facilitated. Okay, it is helpful to locate the median and model values of a data. The different kind of values can be used for finding different tendencies, different central tendencies of the data. Now, okay, what is a statistical series? So, statistical series will refer to the data which is presented in some order and sequences. Okay, the statistical series can be classified in the following heads. There are three ways of classification. First one is that if the data is presented individually, so then we call it as an individual series. If it is presented again discretely, but they are grouped together, so we can call it as a discrete series. Or if it is continuous, we say that it is continuous series. Okay, that is a series of individual observations is a series in which items are listed individually. Okay, now here when the items are arranged in groups, okay, they are already grouped. This is grouped data. This and this discrete series and continuous are for grouped data. So it is, they are grouped data series. Now this is individual data series, ungrouped data. This individual series means nothing else but a ungrouped data. Okay. Next we have inclusive and exclusive series. Inclusive and exclusive, again for the given classes, it may be described as an inclusive series or it may be taken as an exclusive series. When do we take a particular type of series is what we will discuss. Okay, so in inclusive series, both the lower limit and the upper limit of a class interval are included in the class itself. For example, if we take the classes like say 10 to 20, 11 to 20, 21 to 30, 31 to 40 and so on. In this case, what happens is both 11 and 20 are included in the class 11 to 20. So they are called inclusive classes. Okay. Now in exclusive classes, the upper limits are not included. For example, if we have say 10 to 20, 20 to 30, 40 to 50, 50 to 60, then in this class what happens is if you get a value 20, it will not be placed here, it will not be placed here, it will be placed in this section. Okay, so the upper limits are excluded. Upper limits of the interval are excluded from the class itself. Okay, so the exclusive classification is applicable only for a continuous variable. Exclusive classification is applicable for continuous variable and an inclusive classification is applicable for a discrete variable. Is that clear? Inclusive classification is used in case of a discrete variable. Exclusive classification is used for a continuous variable, for grouping them. Okay, open-ended classes. In case if we have say something, one more here, say it is 62 onwards something. We don't know the upper boundary point. It is a question mark. Here also, if we don't know the lower boundary point 0 to 10, or if we don't know what is the lowest value, then we say that it is unbounded classes. So here we have unbounded class or open-ended class. This class is unbounded. So we have open-ended class. So this is also open-ended class. If either the lowest class, the left side of the lowest class or the lowest value of the lower class is unknown and the highest value of the highest class is unknown, then we say that they are called, then they are called open-ended classes. Then they are called open-ended classes. Okay, if the final class or the first class or the initial class has indeterminate end. If the ends are unknown, we can say that ends or end is unknown, then we can say that they have open-ended classes. Okay, now next we shall discuss some more short topics. That is, what is a class limit? We have discussed everything like this. What is a class limit and what kind of class limits are there? Okay, so we may move further. So that is, say if we are having say 10 to 19 is a class. Okay, 10 to 19, say 20 to 29, these kind of classes are there. Then we call this 10 is a lower limit. Okay, this is called a lower limit, and this is called the upper limit of the class 10 to 19. Okay, 10 is called the lower limit, and this is called the upper limit. Okay, now the limits are those values which are included in the classes. Okay, limits are the values which are included in the classes. Now we may have boundary points. Okay, what is invert these two continuous class distributions. Okay, like this exclusive class distributions. So this becomes 10 to 19. So how to convert 10 to 19? So we will take this as 9.5. So we will convert this thing to 9.5 to 19.5. Okay, and then this one will be extended to say 19.5 to 29.5. So here these values are not included in the class. Okay, these values are actually not included in the class. So therefore they are called class boundaries. Okay, class limits are included in the class. Class boundaries may not be included in the class. Okay, so these are called the actual class boundaries, and these are called class limits. That is what we should understand. And class size or the width of a class will be defined as the upper class boundary minus the lower class boundary. This is U and this is L. Okay, or upper class boundary minus lower class boundary. Lower class boundary will give you the class size or the class width, class length, and like that. So that is this much for this chapter, and hope you got a good overview of all the topics that may be covered. And in the next class we shall discuss the questions, MCQs and exam oriented questions of this chapter. So subscribe to this channel so that you can get notifications of the next classes which will be provided soon. Thank you.